Okay, so tracks with the same rules. Is that still a thing? When we did, I forget what video we did, there was a bunch of comments on that's what the tracks need to do, which I feel like is a tired old Facebook comment that people say all the time. Tracks have to go back and promote the track. It's better for the sport if guys can run multiple tracks, blah, blah, blah. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't really know. From a promoter's point of view, maybe, and a track owner's point of view, which is probably you might have a better view on this. You know what you have. If you if you have 20, like Stafford, you have 22 streeters.
Yeah.
Right. They're not going anywhere else because they're not really legal anywhere else.
Right.
Right. So
same with the late models.
Same with the late models. Same with the limited late models.
Yeah.
The only thing that's remotely close to the same are the SK lights, and that's really it. Because at Waterford and Thompson, you could run 604s in the SKs.
Before that, were the SKs pretty much the same?
Yes. So they're. I mean, now there's a small variance, and I knew there was a variance before with the SK lights with bottle cap versus non-bottle cap weight.
What's that bottle cap?
Well, because when you buy a motor from Chevy, a 602 stock, it comes with a little cap on the intakes and a little on the oil pan. But when you go to Rad, the motor gets opened up. Whatever he does, then he puts his seals on. Mm-hmm. So when you just bought a motor straight from Chevy, you might weigh like 50 pounds less or 100 pounds less. You got a weight break. So, there was that variance for a little bit, but, I'm still in agreement to have them the same because I'm sure a lot of those Thompson cars would be coming to probably Waterford right now. If, when Mike Maffio came in and redesigned the wheel on the streeters, it just killed the class.
Yeah, and I thought Foster was changing that, but he doesn't now. I mean, I thought he was reverting back to what they used to be, but now everyone's buying those aftermarket bodies, and that's where the division's going now.
Thompson is pretty much the same rules, I believe. I don't know about the tires, so I don't know all the rules in those because I haven't been in a division in a long time.
Yeah,
I know the one big rule is Thompson, you can still run an open motor. So if I had a Larry's Auto Machine streeter motor, you can't run that at Waterford. So you have guys like Jason Jacolis and maybe a few others that used to run the bowl.
What are they running? Spec motors now?
They just run their open
crate motors.
Most guys are running 602 crate motors, about 85%.
Wow.
Even at Thompson, Stafford.
And the street stocks?
Yes. And it's bad for motor builders, but it's great for the competitors because I can tell you this. The motor that was in Brody's championship truck.
Yep.
And this year, I mean, it's not as fast as it was, but I think it's due to a couple of handling issues for Beal. That motor literally is like 6 years old and has only had valve springs, which cost about $100.
Wow.
Right? Versus when you had your street stock motors, pulled it out. First, it cost you $9,000 to build. The crate motor's $7,000. I've got 6 years on it. You would take it out every winter, bring it to get refreshed for another $2,500, $3,000 every winter.
Right.
Do the math over 6 years.
What was the spec engines? I remember when Tyler was running 2011, 2012, 2013, and it was all about you needed to get a spec engine to be competitive now.
Well, it's rules that are put in place that you can run certain rods or this rod, this ring, this inside the SK motors. And then it was about balancing and blueprinting who did the best work, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were all really fast, but it was equivalent to buying an open SK motor. I mean, they were still $20,000 motors.
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, where's the savings?
When you talk about divisions being the same or like the same rules, I feel like that's a generic statement because outside of a couple divisions, like the SKs and SK lights, right? Like,
Yep.
Like the Speedbowl has the trucks and the mini stocks, right? I think the Waterford would be stupid to get rid of the mini stocks, and I think it's stupid that Thompson runs them and Stafford would never run them.
Right.
And that's the way it should be.
Right.
Right. And I don't know if with the late models, I don't see why if you're Thompson or or the Waterford, you would go back to a G car, and if you're Stafford now, I don't know why you would go to the ACT cars.
Right.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that those make any sense. But I guess the streeters, it would be kind of cool because
because those guys. So, to me, Sid, those guys that are in the minis, streeters, they're still. I'm not saying we're not having fun racing.
Yeah.
But they're having fun on a lot less money.
Right.
Right, and it's different a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not as stressful. It almost, when you get to the level, even like the late models we run, you have so much invested in these cars. The pressure starts not only mounting up on the drivers, the car owners, the crew, and when you're not producing, it's just not fun. Right?
Yeah.
When you're out running streeters with your buddies, I mean, they are serious, so a lot of guys take them serious. So I'm not trying to discount that, but it's a different fun. Right, so we could say, hey, let's switch the rear and go to Waterford. It'd be great.
Yeah.
And that's really not happening anymore.
Well, Thompson and the Bowl have the most symmetry, right?
I would say.
I mean, other than that, Thompson doesn't run trucks and obviously not legend cars, but all those other divisions are the same. Even though the Speedbowl calls them streeters now, Thompson calls them street stocks now too, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So. And they both run ACT late models. So they get the SK604.
Their rules are almost similar all the way through, besides the streeters with the open motors. I don't know about the wheels and tires, but I think those are similar.
Yep.
Same tech guys, both tracks.
You could take a mini stock from the Bowl and go run Thompson?
Jared Roy does. That was his Waterford car.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yep.
And a lot of those streeters, Al Stone's car was a Waterford car.
Right.
Last year. 602. Right? The only difference is the only guy that really comes to mind is a guy like Jason Jacolis, who is a 7.
Yep.
Now, he's been adamant since day one. He was pissed. It was like the government was forcing his hand. That's how he treated this whole 602 crate motor program.
Yeah.
Because what it has done... So if a guy like Jason Jacolis is building his own motors, because there's a lot of old timers like that, and he's not an old timer, but he may be a motor builder.
Right.
Right. Why does he want to go spend $7,000 for a crate motor when he could build one himself for far less? Now you're making him, he's one of the guys, one of the exceptions, because guys like me can't build motors. I was the guy that was paying back in the day when we were running. I remember buying a motor off John Burnett. It was $7,500, and I put it on a credit card. Right?
So it's probably like $9,000.
Oh, more than that. There's mini stock motors. I know of mini stock motors that guy have spent $10,000.
Yeah.
On a mini stock motor.
Well, what you were saying about Shakolis reminds me of my interview with Terry when he transformed the late models to the ACT cars, and he said that Mark St. Hilaire and Phil Rondo were the biggest vocal guys against it because they said, I understand what you're trying to do, but we build our own motors.
Right.
And you are actually making it a lot more expensive for us to race now.
But they're two of the few.
Yeah. Well, were they though? Because Mark went to race up at Stafford for a while, then he retired. Corey went and raced at Stafford. Alan Coates stuck around with a G car for as long as he could. Then he went truck racing. Like, other than Bruce Thomas
Here's the thing.
and Larry Goss, none of those guys went ACT racing.
They were at the end of their career anyways.
Well, that's true.
All those guys you mentioned.
Wayne Corey's the only one that's still racing from those days.
And he quit for a while.
Did he really?
But, those guys you mentioned right now were on the tail end of their career. They were very good.
Yeah.
But it was like... the new blood was coming in. Timmy Jordans of the world, and Anthony Flannery, and it was like right now what we just talked about of Thompson.
Yeah,
I mean Stafford with the SK division. The new blood was coming in. Now it's the Brodies and the Jacob Burns and
Do Do you think the fact that the Act Late models, because I remember Rocco saying it's basically like a modified with a fendered body on it. Do you think that hurts that division where, other than Jason Palmer, right? Like I'm just thinking at the bowl, right? Like Anthony Flannery went mod racing and Timmy Jordan went mod racing. Like instead of these guys becoming the fendered guys, they eventually it's just another division in the pass through to the modifieds. I don't know if I'm overthinking that or not.
No, because it's a very valid point. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah,
you
you were one of them too, right?
We went from enduros, all on our own dime, to mini stocks for 2 years, streeters for 2 years. Like so, I always said this, right? Said, and this is just what it is. I've never stayed in a division long enough to win a championship. Like I finished my rookie year in the streeters, I finished second in points.
Yep.
My second year in the streeters, I finished third in points. Then I moved on to late models. I had Bill White for 2 years. We ran really well.
Yep.
Like
right
I finished right out of the gate. I only had 2 years there. Then I had Emma, and it was a single dad.
Yep.
And then I took a couple years off. Mahoney gave me a shot for 2 years. We won like 5 races in 2 years, and then I went on a hiatus where I didn't run at all.
Right, for
until,
like 5 or 6 years.
At least, until I got that Spafco car. But, there's something to be said for like a guy like Al Stone, right? So this is no knock on him. He's a great driver, a great guy.
Yep.
He was racing street stocks when I was racing street stocks.
Right.
Right? If I've raced that division that long, so, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. I think by now I would have probably racked up, because I won, I think, 5 or 6 races in 2 years.
Yeah.
If I would have stayed in that division for 17 years, how many races do I win and how many championships am I battling for? The only 2 years I ran, I finished second and third in points. And so I feel like every division, to me, should have been a stepping stone if your desire for racing is large and you want to be the Grand Poobah one day.
Right.
Right? So you use every division. And I said to Emma, I'm doing it right now. Emma, we've talked about SK Lights. You know what I said to her? We've got to run good here first. We run good here, then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just how I race coming through the ranks. And so did my brother.
Well, one of the things, that's a good point, right? Because when I go to Stafford, you see a feeder division of like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the limited late models has a bunch of old street stock drivers, and the late models have a bunch of limited late model drivers. And the chain works, Kids in the go-karts, you see them in the SK Lights, and now you see them in the top front of that field was all former SK Light drivers, right?
Right.
Other than Rocco.
Right.
At the bowl, that path up to the SKs that you took, nobody takes that anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But then, and at the same point, like, why hasn't Al Stone ever gone to a late model? Why hasn't Kenny Cassidy ever been in a late model? Why isn't CJ Canfield in a street stock? Why isn't Jason Palmer in a modified? Like, they don't, and listen, they have their own reasons. Like, Jason Palmer's told me he's a fendered guy. The modifieds don't do it for him.
Right.
Bruce Thomas used to say the same things. But it doesn't bother me because people have to race what they can afford. But there's something wrong with the progression through the ranks. You know what I mean?
You know what it's like, and
because I've been waiting for Ken Cassidy to be in a late model for like a decade, and I just don't think it's going to happen for him.
You know what I can tell you, this Sid, is we ran through the divisions, me and my brother, with not a lot of money, but with a hell of a lot of heart and a hell of a lot of desire to be successful in the sport we loved.
Yeah, but eventually you guys would get somebody like Mahoney, or you.
Well, because of the desire and the effort that was put forth.
Yeah, right.
Right. If you don't put the desire, the effort, or the want, or the risk taking, not everybody has that in them. We were taking chances and shots.
Yep.
And along the way, made a small name for ourselves locally at the Speedbowl, where some people didn't want to be around us.
Yeah.
Some people wanted to be behind us 1,000%. Even when I look at guys like Ryan Waterman, he's been doing it like 9 years.
For a while.
10 years.
Longer than that, yeah.
Right? I mean, come on. You should know the setups. You should know the cars. You should know how to wheel. I mean, you've been doing it
That's a great question, though. Is that just his preference? Like Jason Palmer's preference is he's going to race late models,
Yep.
and that's it.
And
Larry Barnett was a street stock guy,
Yeah.
and he never went.
Yeah.
And he did dabble in the mods, but I guess my question is, back to the original point. Are these guys just one-offs that's just their choice, or is the system broken where to go through the ranks like you did, that system is not there and they're stuck where they are because of finances or rules changes or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if there's any correlation between the two.
I think that for some reason the system is broken because nobody's doing it anymore.
Yeah.
For one, and it's terrible to see. You know who's
Stafford again is the exception.
You know who's doing it? And I know I name plug them all the time. Emma and Brody.
Yeah.
Right? We started from the bottom, and we are going through just like me and Sean did.
Yeah.
Our kids are going through the progression because that's what we did.
So ultimately, are we in agreement that the tracks, there's no shot the tracks are ever going to, like that Tri-Track Series thing, that's never happening again.
I can't.
Where they're going to work together to have some joint point fun.
Not unless owners get along at some point. And I don't know, whether.
So I think it's not unless everybody conforms to Stafford's rules, because they're the ones that are not going to change.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to change.
And if you're in their position, I don't think you
would.
Why
would you?
Yeah, you wouldn't. Right.
They got full fields.
Right. You wouldn't change a damn thing. Yep.